What's up, Whisper Nation, and welcome to part 2 of the Week 13 matchup show, where we dive into every fantasy relevant player in the second half of the NFL slate of games this week. But first, did you know that we now live stream both on Monday? You probably knew that one already, but Thursday night now as well over on the YouTube channel. You can join us and react to us with us to every big play as it happens. And starting this week, you can join us and our sponsors for unique in-game betting opportunities to win some serious cash. Make sure you're already subscribed over on YouTube so you can join us for every Monday night and Thursday night stream for the rest of the season. Now let's get to the show.
Right here.
That's right, Whisper Nation. Like Austin said, we're going to talk that second half of the NFL slate of matchups, but get on over to YouTube and subscribe to the YouTube channel if you like that fresh fantasy football content, because it's coming over there daily, and you can give the other videos and all the things we're doing over there a like on your way in. We would greatly appreciate it. But now we get to welcome you all the way into the show. My name is Big Travy. You can find me on Twitter at Big Travy TFW. I am joined by Johnny Game Time Hicks, who you can find on Twitter at Johnny_Game Time. And the man you saw with the beautiful backdrop over there in Arizona is my man Austin Sear, who you can find on Twitter at Austin_R_Sear. If you're listening to this on the audio version, get yourself over to Patreon so you can catch these beautiful backdrops. Austin, I'm just going to start with you, man. It looks beautiful out there. What's going on? Let Whisper Nation what you're up to out there, man.
Oh, man, thanks for the prompt. Yeah, it's my dad's 70th birthday. Born and raised in Arizona. It is his 70th. He lives in Tucson, so came over from LA to celebrate with my dad, and we're over at a little casita here over in northern Tucson, and it's pretty nice. It's nice to be back with some Saguaros. Missed him.
Yeah, happy birthday, Richard. Johnny, how are you doing, my man?
Dude, I'm doing fantastic. I gotta say, man, Austin's backdrop, it makes him look like he's like in front of a green screen, because that thing is like, it's like high def, bro.
Clear. Yeah, man.
Yeah, it looks great.
Really rocking it today, man.
It just got me jacked, man. It's like, man, I want to be outside right now.
Yeah, I know. It feels like, well, it's actually pretty foggy and overcast in California, so I don't know if it'd be the greatest backdrop, but I don't think we could match that, and I don't even want to try to. Look, for today's show, I wanted to start it off on a positive note regarding the holidays season. Yesterday's show, we said, what's your worst gift? Kind of a negative start, but, as we get into the holiday season, it's all about what we're grateful for. Obviously, Thanksgiving, all these things we're trying to give gifts to show how much we care about each other. And so as we focus on gratitude, I want to look at the fantasy football season across all leagues. What has you the most grateful? It could be avoiding injuries in a certain league, believing fiercely in a take and watching it pay off, or just thankful for a particular league or league mates. Guys, what's really, when you look at gratitude for this 2021 fantasy football season, what's got you the most fired up in that spirit here? I'll start with you, Austin.
We had an evolution in our league of record this year. We're in year 11, and goddamn, do we love that league, and are we passionate about it? And
yes,
when you get a bunch of passionate football fans together in a competitive space, sometimes it can get a little bit tense. Maybe it can get a little, like, the mud gets thrown around a little bit as we're all trying to win, grab that ship. And we had a little bit of a shift. We really leaned into what the community was, why we're about these leagues. And yeah, we love the gambling. We love scoring points. We love winning big old fat championship belts. This, but it's really about being able to come together with your people and enjoy this game. And we just had a shift in our league of record where we prioritize that connection over the sheer competition. And for that, I'm very grateful.
I love it. I love it. Love it. Love it. Johnny, what about you, man? We focus on gratitude for this holiday season, fantasy football. What do you think's got you the most grateful this year?
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, you kind of joked about not having injuries there, man. It's been brutal for me with injuries. Your boys lost so many injured Warriors this season. It's been horrible. So that would definitely not be it. I would definitely have to say I am so grateful for just this season and what we've done here, not only for TFW, but the community we built as well, Whisper Nation, our Discord chat, all of that stuff. The people that we're, getting in that group makes it a lot of fun. It expands on, what Austin was talking about, with our league of record and having that bond. It's fun now expanding that and getting Whisper Nation involved and letting them know, like what our traditions are and just learning more and more about the people that love this game as well as we do.
Yeah, that's well said there for both of you. I just wanted to add a little bit, I'm not a fan of escapism as a philosophy here, but I do like when we get into a mode where we can look at the NFL, we can look at fantasy football, we can look at these leagues we're in and realize this isn't an escape, but it is a sanctuary. It's somewhere we can go and really have something that we can, get away from the distractions and the stuff that are causing stress and anxiety in our life, and we can kind of be within the love and the connection of the community that we have there. And just to add to that point, we talked about it at the top of the show, but these Monday and Thursday night streams that we're launching to be able to watch the game with my boys, first and foremost, you guys on the show with me, but then also to bring in Whisper Nation and react in real time and really lean into the community and why we love this great game. And we decided to make a podcast over it and then build a brand on top of that. So, gents, I appreciate you divulging me in my philosophical ways today, but we will get into the show. And speaking of that holiday season, and, if you are still looking for that perfect gift idea, we still have you covered. The sponsor of today's show is Manscaped, and they have the tools to guarantee that you win this year's White Elephant competition. Manscaped is the leader in men's below-the-waist grooming, and they have served over 4 million men worldwide. Guys, add that up, because that's 8 million balls out there that they've covered. 20% off plus free shipping is what you'll get if you go to manscaped.com and use the promo code TFWMAN. That's 20% off plus free shipping with the code TFWMAN at manscaped.com. Once again, 20% off plus free shipping with the code TFWMAN at manscaped.com. All year, your significant other has been nagging you about how much time you put into your fantasy team. You might as well gift them some beautiful balls this holiday season with Manscaped. Gents, let's get into. Yeah,
I just got to say before we jump in here, sorry, but when we read that, it just makes me laugh. I think every time. Well, I wonder if that means that Lance Armstrong isn't a fan of Manscaped yet. So we got to get him.
Yeah,
we got it.
The one bald wonder isn't allowed to use.
So,
I think he is. I think
he probably is.
4 million that they've served, because he probably gets it free. They're talking about the people that actually buy it.
Oh, very good point. Good point.
Yeah. All right, we'll hop into these matchups. The first one on the slate is the Atlanta Falcons hosting the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Obviously, we've got some news swirling as we start to record this with AB getting suspended. Then before that, his injury timetable had been extended, as it has been pretty much all year. We'll remove AB from the equation and basically say for Tampa Bay, we start him if we got him. That's kind of the case that we have with these Buccaneers, right? We like especially against Atlanta here, we like it. But also, I really wanted to just dive into Brady a little bit here, because could we be worried here that the game script actually limits Brady's ceiling in this game as 11-point favorites here?
You know what? Yeah, and I'll take it just one step further. This team isn't as good as it needs to be for Brady to simply impose his will. Like, the defense has holes and the offense has been banged up one way or another most of the season. I was really riding high on Johnny's narrative that Brady was going to go for Peyton's single season touchdown record. I think it makes a lot of sense, and I think you were spot on with that. But winning games is still more important than getting the record, even for Tom, who already has 238 of those wins. Winning comes first, then comes personal wishes. This team just isn't good enough to both win and do it in the exact way that Brady wants. And in the reality, also, Fournette is playing his best professional football in the last 5 years since he's been in the league. Right now with a Pro Football score of 83.2, number 9 on the entire season of all the halfbacks. And for a little comparison, in his rookie year, Leonard Fournette was 60.7 and never broke 69 nice in Jacksonville. Brady has made running backs work, but he really hasn't had a lot of talent to work with. And Fournette is one of the best halfbacks he's played with. Correct me if I'm wrong there, but they're playing so well. The team is balanced. The team is also doing things it needs to do to win. They're still winning, but they're just not able to do it in exactly the way they want. And to me, that's going to bring down Brady's ceiling a little bit, because I think he wants it all go through him, but he wants to win more than anything else. And they need to have a balanced offense for that to happen.
You know what's wild? You know how many touchdowns Brady has right now? You know how many touchdowns he's throwing for right now on the season? 30. Okay. He's actually pretty close to that record. They've got 5 games left. He would have to definitely throw 5 touchdowns probably a couple of times in a couple of those games, and we'll see.
So
but he's a little bit closer than we think.
Well,
it's definitely doable.
Not after you told me how many he had. He's not as close.
He leads the league right now.
Yeah, of course. But he also had 9 touchdowns to 2 rushing touchdowns through the first 2 games. So the ratio was already kind of tilted. And now what did we see? That things evens out. We see Fournette going for 4 touchdowns. Ronald Jones has a couple over the last couple of weeks. So this is a real thing. Like, when they get into these matchups, he does probably want the record. I'll tell you what he wants more. He probably wants a healthy team into the playoffs with a shot at a Super Bowl. And I think that's probably what he would want more. And I think that's what we've got to look at in these games where he's not going to get challenged a lot. And that is not what Atlanta's going to do. They are not going to challenge the Buccaneers in a lot of ways this week. But I do think that we've seen enough out of Cordarrelle Patterson this year to understand that he is matchup proof even in this tough spot for him. Okay. He misses a week 11. We thought, oh, high ankle sprain. We're like, oh, we're worried about it. He comes back basically and is the same guy that featured fantasy football Swiss Army knife, if you will, 27 PPR points behind 16 carries for 108 yards and 2 touchdowns, 2 of 3 receiving for 27 yards. He now has 18 or more PPR points in 4 of his last 6 games. Yes, Tampa Bay is a tough matchup. We care not for our potential fantasy football MVP and CPAT here. He is likely to see the bulk of the work. And we look at tough matchups before for Cordarrelle Patterson against Carolina and New Orleans. We see Atlanta just shift him to a receiving option to help him get home more for fantasy football. Maybe that's not the purpose they're doing it, but we've seen that's what happens for us. By the way, those 2 tough spots, he scored 18 PPR fantasy points in each of those games. I mean, sheesh, like this guy is absolutely dominant. And I think he's the main vein for this offense. Austin, I wanted to kick it over about maybe the only guy we're looking at outside of Cordarrelle Patterson. He's had 2 straight clunkers. That's Kyle Pitts. How are we looking at Pitts here in this matchup?
Yeah, so Kyle Pitts to me is falling into a familiar territory. We talked about this in part 1 of the Week 13 breakdown. For a tight end to be an answer, a real difference maker for your team, they need to check a few boxes. Physically gifted in all the right ways, long, fast, strong, etc. The right role on the offense with limited competition. He's got all that going. But then a prioritization, borderline obsession from the quarterback to get the tight end the ball. Pitts checks all those boxes minus the last one for me, which puts him in that Hawkinson category. Pitts has all the upside in the world, but his floor is low and will be until Ryan becomes obsessed with him the way that Brady is with Gronk, Breeze was with Graham, and even a little bit of how Matt Ryan was with Tony Gonzalez near the end over there.
Yeah, we're hoping he gets a Jack Doyle performance like Doyle did last week against Tampa Bay. That would be, the Pitts truthers would just be absolutely ecstatic. Moving on to the next game on the slate, we have the Los Angeles Rams hosting the Jacksonville Jaguars. It's a 48-point over-under, and the Rams favored by a whopping 12.5 points. When we started this the research on this sheet, I was assigned James Robinson, signed by myself, I suppose. I was given James Robinson here. I wanted to dive into it. Just monitor his status. He was a limited participant Wednesday, then did not participate Thursday. Maybe that's the maintenance day for J-Rob, but hopefully you have Carlos Hyde as a backup just in case there. But if we're looking at Robinson, 20 touches for Robinson last week, that brings his average up to 15.5. If we look at the active running backs for this week, that ranks 13th. So we like that. He's a fringe RB1 just on usage alone. But given the offense, he's obviously going to show us RB2 floor weeks from time to time. This could be one of those floor weeks. The Rams project to boat race the Jags. After 3 embarrassing losses in a row, the Rams are licking their chops to get to Jacksonville here at home in this matchup. It won't be pretty, especially considering the fact that the Los Angeles is the 4th stingiest defense for fantasy football running backs to face over the last 5 weeks. But again, we like the volume to carry J-Rob and even Hyde. Where J-Rob's going to be that RB2 probably in a matchup like this, I look at Hyde to be like an RB3 flex should he go because of the way they've used him in the passing game, and I could see that getting home here. Austin, we've got nothing else in this Jags lineup, right? Or do we looking at O'Shaughnessy maybe if Arnold's out? I don't know. What do you got here?
No, I'm not really looking at it. In the stat that I had gone when I was searching for any other viability, it was kind of funny. I was looking at what has come out of Jacksonville in the last 5 weeks. That's since the bye. From now until then, outside of Agnew, who was placed on the IR, but did have 2 double-digit fantasy days, under 14, but still technically a double-digit fantasy day. Any guess who had the best fantasy performance outside of Robinson and Lawrence?
Well, it's not my boy LaVisca.
Tavon Austin.
It wasn't.
Man.
Tavon Austin.
Yeah, going back.
So we had Dan Arnold week 8, 68 yards on 8 catches, and then Tavon Austin last week, 2 catches,
just
21
as
yards,
expected.
and a tutty right there. So that's it. Like right now in the last several weeks, your best options out of Jacksonville who are still on the team, still active on the team. You got Tavon Austin, who I didn't even frankly he was with Jacksonville right now. And Dan Arnold, who is that tight end role, God bless, do your best, say a prayer. So no, the answer's no.
I'm with you on that one. It's hard to trust anything. It's even hard to trust J-Rob, even though he's doing it for us. Like, it's just hard to plug him in. You're plugging your nose kind of thing. On the Rams side of the football, Johnny, we're going to start with Darrell Henderson. This team is kind of banged up all over the offense, but Henderson is a guy dealing with a quad injury. Talk to me about Henderson and the backfield outlook regardless in this matchup against Jacksonville.
Yeah, so I do want to. So first off, Sean McVay does expect Henderson to play. That was what he came out and said. Although Henderson did not practice, he pulled a DMP on Wednesday, but I do expect him to play in this game, and I think that you can trust him. But I just want to look and explain to Whisper Nation a little bit, because you're going to look at the matchup. You're going to say the Jags. Wow, tasty, juicy matchup, right? Well, not so fast. The Jags are bottom 12 in fantasy points allowed to the running back position over the last 5 weeks. But over the last 3 weeks, they have played Cordero Patterson, JT, and Jeff Wilson. Only Jeff Wilson has failed to put up over 20 fantasy points against this defense. So going back to Henderson and whether or not you should start him, here's what's crazy, guys. After a really hot start, we were talking about Henderson and how he was producing and how he's kind of living up to that Cam Akers hype, right? He had scored no fewer than 15 fantasy points in a PPR league in his first 6 games, and his lowest RB finish was RB 20 during that span. However, since then, it's been a totally different story. From week 7 to 12, he's only eclipsed 15 PPR fantasy points 2 times, and he's only finished inside the top 20 overall at the position on a weekly basis 2 times. What is the big difference, you ask? Because it's a head scratcher when you're just looking at it. Well, in 4 out of 5 games in those first 6 weeks, he scored a touchdown. During the second span, he's only scored 2 games in which he has scored a touchdown. Well, you say, can he then get into the end zone? I believe he can. The Jags have allowed 11 rushing touchdowns on the season. Only the Chargers and the Jets, boys, have allowed more touchdowns this season. So you're asking me, I think you can roll out Henderson. If he doesn't get a touchdown, he's going to be an RB3 for you. If he gets a touchdown, it'll be more in that RB2 range for you.
Man, so continuing on from the banged up running back, we've got a slightly banged up OBJ after, we had an OBJ sighting here. Then he picks up a hip pointer right after that play. We see Van Jefferson heating up. Austin, where are we on our Rams receivers? Besides, obviously, the auto start in Cooper Kupp, how can we project these wide receivers this week?
Yeah, the OBJ being banged up is something that could have an influence. And when we're evaluating all of the pieces contributing to a prediction, that's really the one that edges it out. Because when I look at last week, Travy, like OBJ and Van Jefferson were so darn close. 98% snap share for both of these wideouts last week against Green Bay. Cooper Kupp at 100%. Lots of 3 wide receiver sets. You like that. Near identical between OBJ and Van Jefferson in almost every metric. Pro Football Focus grade difference of just 3. 10 targets to 9. 5 catches to 3. 93 yards to 81. Both had a touchdown. 16.8 fantasy points to 16.6 fantasy points. I like both of these wide receivers. I think there's some logic to be like, well, OBJ's in a new spot. Maybe he's a little bit unleashed. Maybe he's going to get a little bit of his old. But then it's like, well, what really was that old? This could have just been a good game. And if he's got a hip pointer going on, that could be a little bit banged up. I really like Van Jefferson as a solid piece on this team. He's been there. He's been with the role. He's done well at different points in the season. I understand the illustriousness and the shine of OBJ. I think it's a wiser bet to go with the familiar, considering we don't know how good OBJ really is. And God bless, I hope he's phenomenal, but I just can't say that with certainty right now. But I know who Van Jefferson is, and he's been productive. I like both of these wide receivers, though. If they're going 98%, 98%, and 100% in snap share, like these guys are involved, it's a high potent offense. I like them both. But if you're asking me to pick between the two, I'm going to give it a little bit to Van Jefferson, really because of that hip pointer.
Yeah, and both wide receivers have a really good schedule coming up here, too, for the rest of the season, including this week against Jacksonville. So it's interesting. It's kind of the in-season version of getting the guy later. You get Van Jefferson because it comes with a little bit less maybe volatility here, or at least downside. I don't know. I just think Van Jefferson's probably was cheaper for you to acquire, obviously, than OBJ. So I think it's probably a great bet as well going forward. All right, so we've talked about the rest of the team. We'll talk about the man that leads them, Matthew Stafford. Look, he's reportedly nursing some things. He looked much better, though, last week against the Packers than he had the 2 previous weeks before the bye. He should be set up to ball on Sunday, right? I mean, that's what we think. If we're looking at this as like Rams versus the Jags, unfortunately, we have another one of those situations where maybe he gets scripted out. He finally saved his floor last week against Green Bay, but it was the first and only time he cleared 20 fantasy points in the entire month of November. He's been getting sacked more frequently, but last week against Green Bay, he posted over 300 yards and he tossed 3 touchdowns. Look, Jags look to be just what the doctor ordered for Stafford. Now, over the last 5 weeks, Jags have limited the great Josh Allen to a miserable day, and they've given up the 7th fewest fantasy points to QBs in that time, but the other QBs they faced, Wentz, Jimmy G, Matt Ryan, and Geno Smith. I'm okay with Matt Stafford this week based on some of the people that they've played. And obviously, I just think he's, temper a little bit of expectations. I do think this could be a big Darrell Henderson and even a Sony Michel game. Yeah. Because as as they want to try and use this as a mini bye, if they get up ahead and pull some starters there. Yeah. But, it's the NFL and things change quickly. So we'll see how that goes. The Las Vegas Raiders are hosting the Washington football team in one of the higher over-unders on the week. 49.5 points here. Vegas favored by 2.5 at home. Austin, I'm going to kick it right back to you here because we've been talking to you a lot about the Gibson situation. Obviously, a little bit heavily invested in our list or in the League of Record. And so you have a little bit of, your finger on the pulse here. Gibson returning some decent value as of late. Plus, we have the impact of McKissick's injury here. How are you looking at the backfield right now, Austin?
Yeah, so we got to note first that J.D. McKissick is dealing with a concussion. He could return, but I'd be cautious playing him regardless, given the perceived game script of this game with Washington going up against Las Vegas. I think it's kind of an even match, and I like McKissick when Washington looks to get blown out. So injury plus the game script. I'm not a big McKissick fan this week. Moving over to Antonio. Gibson passed the eye test pretty hard for me on Monday night, Travis. And since the bye 3 weeks ago, Gibson has averaged 24 carries per game. And last week was his most involved game of the season, 29 carries for on 111 yards, plus 7 catches on 7 targets for an additional 35 yards. If Gibson's shin is a legit concern, it appears that Ron Rivera is trying to break that shin, which until it happens is great for your fantasy team if he's on your squad. Jared Patterson, that is, isn't really a factor right now to eat into Gibson's work. Only 3 targets, 2 catches on the year for 9 total yards all season. The 7 targets Gibson got last week, caught them all, were a season high. And they won that game. So I don't see why they would lean away from this kind of situation. I think that Gibson is in a smash spot until that shin is truly smashed.
This is a great spot for him, too, against the Raiders, who are absolutely porous against the run here. But I just imagine you talking about Rivera wanting to break his shin. Like, we watched him on that one play where his shin got, kind of bent backwards or whatever. And it's like, they pan to Rivera. He's evilly smiling. And then they're like, no, he's back in. He's like, damn it, run him again. Run him again. Get him out there again. I don't think that's really what's happening, but it does seem that way.
Why won't you die?
Yeah, you just won't die. The talented Terry McLaurin, man, that's what we're looking at here, but he's been very up and down. Johnny, are we happy? Are we excited for this week for Terry McLaurin?
Boys, are we ever? Let me tell you. Look, I understand we've been preaching the last, for a while now because the Raiders were a pretty solid, cornerback group. They didn't allow a lot to the wide receivers for the first half of the season, but they have gone through a lot of change there in Las Vegas throughout this, last couple weeks. And that has definitely affected the defense because now over the last 4 weeks, they have become a top 12 matchup for wide receivers over the last month, averaging 34.5 fantasy points given up to the wide receiver. Then you look at Terry McLaurin, who has been very up and down, like Travis alluded to. And yet, when you look into his metrics, he's 12th in the league in target share for all wide receivers. He's 3rd in the league in air yards. But here is the key point, boys, and why I'm so confident in you can starting Terry McLaurin, not only this week, but in solid matchups that we'll talk about. He is second in the league right now in unrealized air yards at the wide receiver position with 654. 654. Can you believe that? Well, I am so confident that you could start him is because if you look at Las Vegas, his big thing with McLaurin has been that connection, right? Catch radius or catch point with Heinicke as the quarterback. Well, Vegas will solve that because they've been giving up 66% catch rate, completion rating to wide receivers this season. And then you look at Terry McLaurin's production, what he's done so far. We talk about up and down. Well, his 3 best finishes or top 5 finishes this year against the New York Giants, the Green Bay Packers, and the Atlanta Falcons. All 3 of those guys were giving up, or as a team, we're giving up 60% completion percentage to wide receivers or better. So therefore, I think this is one of those exo facto connect the dots. So McLaurin is going to have a mega boss day.
Mega boss.
I'd just like to say that Logan Thomas is putting his hand up after you guys have talked about both of these guys and said, hey, look, I want in on some of this action too. We look at like Logan Thomas in his first game back, was in on 79% of the snaps. We watched it on the Monday night stream, rooting for our boy left and right. He was second, saw his second highest target market share of the season, 17% of the market share in that game. That's really, really encouraging. And he saw some we saw multiple deep shots. Heinicke was just a little bit off on those. Also the red zone look where he got absolutely robbed. Logan Thomas could be one of the most incredible holds in fantasy football. His schedule is coming up really nice down the stretch. So if you held him through the IR stint, you're going to be happy because that actually starts this week against a Raiders team allowing the 3rd most PPR points against the position this year. So we like that. But also, I just thought about this. We didn't touch on it in here. I'm just going to throw it in. Heinicke is a decent stream.
Yes.
If we like McLaurin, we like Logan Thomas, we like Gibson, we have to like Heinicke here. It's a really good over-under. I'm going to throw him in here as just a guy that you should be interested in. And now I'm kind of liking him over a lot of the guys we talked about to start the week. Just the more and more you dive into some of this stuff, things tend to be revealed to you down the stretch. I think Heinicke, if he's still sitting there on your waiver, I know it's going to be up and down, but hell, man, we're doing that every week with the guys like Tua, Jimmy G.
He plays hard, bro.
Yeah. Well, and
Just
the biggest thing is,
damn you! I was going to bring him up as soon as I brought up Derek Carr.
Wrote it down,
yes,
dude.
I was, dude. I was
so
Derek Carr or Heinicke this week because I like Heinicke's matchup.
Yeah, I think I don't know if I'd put him in over Carr, but I think you could make the case. I think Carr's floor is kind of better.
We'll talk about Carr,
but I think we'll get into Carr here. But I just wanted to note here, you look at some of these rushing totals over the last few games. It hasn't been pretty for Heinicke, but if we go back to some earlier in the year, 40, 43, 95 rushing yards. That's what's capable here for our guy Taylor Heinicke in the he's got the sneaky wheels. This year's like poor man's Ryan Tannehill, maybe. I don't know. Doing some weird stuff here.
Smashed that over on the completions for us on the Monday night stream, pairing up with Underdog.
Yeah, just with as nothing was happening there. He could have had even more if he'd have just connected with Logan Thomas, and Terry McLaurin. But anyways, moving on. We're not bitter. We're not bitter here. The Las Vegas Raiders. I mean, what a world we're in, actually, guys, where this is probably going to be the meatiest game we talk about in the entire slate. The Las Vegas Raiders and the Washington football team. But nonetheless, here we are. So wanted to talk a little bit, Johnny, about Waller's injury and the effects on actually Carr and Renfrow. And then if we see anybody past Renfrow in the passing game, as far as wide receivers, that we could, kind of use, because remember, this is the most beatable secondary in the NFL. We want to target our passing weapons against them. So how are you feeling this week, Johnny?
Well, have they been the most beatable defense over the last month? I'll dive into that, Big Trav. That's a good question because they did start off. We know like everyone and their mother could pass on them. I could go out there and probably pass for 300 yards over the first 6 weeks of the season, but they've turned it around as far as on the wide receiver spot. And so I want to dive in really quick to Hunter Renfrow and then I'll dive into Derek Carr because it is a little bit a funny situation there. So when you're talking about Hunter Renfrow, guys, Washington hasn't been as great of a matchup as the first 6 weeks, like I alluded to. They have actually jumped up. They're actually the 8th most difficult matchup for wide receivers over the last month, allowing just 28.1 fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. And so you would say, oh, well, then I don't know if I feel very confident in starting Hunter Renfrow because of, Darren Waller going down, and we don't know with Bryan Edwards, he pops up every once in a while. Well, let me just calm your, like, it was like stumbling upon gold if you got Hunter Renfrow, because boys, let me tell you just how good he has been. It was kind of mind-boggling to me too. His hog rate right now, which is targets per snap, is 19% for the Raiders, which is ranked 7th in the league for wide receivers. And what that hog rate does is, the reason why you want to look at that is because you look at his snap share, because we like to look at snap share and opportunities, right? But when you look at their also hog rate, it means that when Hunter Renfrow is being heavily targeted when he is in on the game. Then you look at what he's doing, and why does Derek Carr trust him? Oh, no wonder. 82% completion percentage of his catches he's catching. 82%. Then he's getting a 1.99 yards per route ran, which we love because, anything over 2 usually in case a very solid wide receiver. Then you're looking at this matchup. Pro Football Focus, just individually, Landon Collins is supposed to be matched up, or expected to be, for a majority of Hunter Renfrow snaps. Collins is allowing 77% catch rate on 319 routes. So it should be bingo, bango, bongo. Hunter Renfrow, even down the stretch, is going to be one of those guys that's probably, we talk about on a lot of championship rosters, he could be another one of those guys just because he's so solid and a trust blanket for Derek Carr, who, you asked if I would start him. Washington, although, they've been a top 10 matchup for quarterbacks over the last month, allowing 18.3 fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. Derek Carr, 19 or more fantasy points in 4 out of 6 games. So I do think, like Travis was alluding to, he has a really safe floor. When we were talking about Heinicke versus Carr, I would probably go with Carr, but I do think that you can play both these quarterbacks in this matchup.
Yeah, I think, man, that one's a tough one, just because I think the rushing floor could actually get Heinicke there. But yeah, again, I think it's the floor for Carr as a consistent piece. But Austin, before I jump into another sleeper in this matchup, I wanted to ask you about Josh Jacobs, because after Thanksgiving, we saw a little bit of signs of the old Josh Jacobs against it was a tough on paper defense for Dallas to go up against. Are we buying or selling this new look Josh Jacobs over the last couple weeks?
You won't.
I will. Josh Jacobs has been notoriously inconspicuous with his physical since entering the league. Is he hurt? Is he not? How's he feeling? It's been a lot of he's a good back. He's not a great back. Given volume, though, he does solid work. We saw him be as a back end RB1 when he was fed. And that's what we saw him get going last week. Josh Jacobs is feeling good. Apparently on Thanksgiving, he accumulated 112 total yards on 24 touches, scoring a touchdown and catching 2 passes in the process. They won that game, and that's important. Now they have a plus 500 record, the Raiders do, and Jacobs is the only back with the possibility of workhorse volume. Drake was involved in that Thanksgiving game, but a secondary piece by a lot. Washington is pretty decent against the run, clocking in as the 4th best rush defense per Pro Football Focus, but they're outside of the top 10 in points allowed to the position, averaging 19.5 fantasy points per game. I like Jacobs this week and moving forward as a back-end RB2 for now, but he really could move up if that volume does as well, Travie.
Yeah, I like that. I wanted to make the case for Foster Moreau here because he has seen, it's slightly as easy as looking at the production he had in week 7 when Waller missed with an ankle injury. Now, granted, it was against the Eagles. They're a very good tight end target defense, if you will, but he played 100% of the snaps in that game, caught 6 of 6 targets for 60 yards and a score. This past week, when thrust into action, Moreau was far from his week 7 form, scoring only 1 point in PPR. But he was targeted 5 times, and he saw 89% of the snaps after Waller exited. We know Carr loves tight ends, and he's already used Moreau as a replacement weapon effectively, and this offense loves the tight end position as a highly targeted vein. I think we turn to the actual matchup here. Washington is middle of the pack over the last 5 weeks. They give up just 10 points per game, but this seems like a stream-worthy week, and if you need to bridge the Waller gap, you have this week, and then you get a really prime matchup in Kansas City next week, too, for a couple of spot starts while you look to navigate the Waller injury. So I don't think Moreau is out of the realm of possibility as a streamer, and I honestly think he's going to be a little bit better than a streamer, and I like him as a sleeper in this one. Moving on, we have the Pittsburgh Steelers hosting the Baltimore Ravens. It's a 44-point over-under. We've got Baltimore favored by 3 on the road here. When we look at the Baltimore situation, man, we have Lamar Jackson throwing 4 picks, and I was wondering if that's something to worry about and going forward. So I'm looking at last week, it's maybe the worst primetime game I've watched in a long time. And Lamar was no exception to making it the worst with those 4 interceptions. He only completed 62 of his passes and posted 165 yards passing. And yet, number 8 still got 13 fantasy points in most formats. So are we worried that between the Miami and Cleveland games, he posted just 2 touchdowns and 5 interceptions? Yep. Is it concerning that his floor is solid? But it is concerning, but his floor is solid and his ceiling is QB1 any given week because of the rushing that he's capable to do. So take the good with the bad this week. Should be more good than bad against Pittsburgh secondary that is stopping pretty much no one this year. So Herbert gets home against him. Guys that want to throw and run on him can do it right now. Pittsburgh, not the same defense that we had seen before. Austin, I wanted to ask you about Freeman's outlook following a down performance against, obviously that was a really weird and mucky game for the Ravens, but do we have a little bit more confidence this week?
We've got Devonta Freeman, we've got Latavius Murray, both are involved. Of these 2 backs, Freeman is preferred, but neither is recommended by me outside of a what-the-heck flex, and we're on borderline desperation flex. Freeman clocked last week with 49% snap share, Murray close with 45%. Freeman doubled the carries, though, with 16. The thing is, he's really not being super efficient, and alarmingly has not received a single red zone carry. He need the defense to mess up for him to break one. I don't see him getting a ton of opportunities. You're banking on something kind of weird happening for him to have a truly impactful performance. He is in that floor play running back category for me that I delved into last season of the David Johnsons of the world, but even with a little less shine because Lamar Jackson is their best rusher.
Yeah, I'm with you there. In the passing game, look, Johnny, we've seen Pittsburgh give up big games to T. Higgins, to the Chargers wide receivers. So we know Mark Andrews or Marquise Brown, and then obviously Mark Andrews are guys that we're firing up with pretty good confidence kind of going forward. Will depend on matchup, of course. But where are we at with Bateman? Because he had the little bit of a mini breakout. He's had a couple down games. One of those games was obviously not with Lamar Jackson, and then we had the weird game last week. So how are we feeling about Bateman this week?
I'm not playing. I'll be honest, like Whisper Nation might not like this, or if you're listening and you have Bateman, I think Bateman is honestly droppable. I know that sounds rough. I know it sounds, sad, and the upside for Bateman is definitely there in his future. But as far as the season goes, with Hollywood there, I just don't, you have Hollywood. You've also got Mark Andrews. It's hard to ask Lamar to support more than those 2 fantasy assets. And so when you're looking at Bateman, 4 straight weeks of declining target share, he's only played on more than 55% of snaps 1 time in the last 3 games. So for me, he's really just a guy that I don't mind putting on your waiver if you need, a stash or, stashing a defense or something like that to prime yourself for the playoffs. I would rather do that than to keep Bateman at this point because there's really no upside unless, God forbid, Marquise goes down or something like that. That was probably what it would require.
All right, so we know we can count on a few things every single week, right? We can count on Johnny quoting a Batman movie or trying to sing during an episode, of course. We can also count on me asking Austin if we can start Chase Claypool this week. And it seems to be a continuing trend. We know our Steelers studs. We know who we're starting. But tell me, man, I need it. Is there a case for Chase here?
Chase is a what-the-heck flex, and it breaks my heart because he could have been so much more this season, Travis. He's better than a desperate flex, but I just can't call him a sneaky flex because of Ben Roethlisberger. Big Ben is starting to earn is he washed consideration, and that is going to have an effect on this big-body deep field receiver. Chase is a deep field option, averaging over 16 yards per catch compared to 11.9 for Deontay Johnson. If Ben had a better arm, maybe this duo would stack differently, but here we are. Proceed with caution and limited expectations. I will, and it sucks.
I do want to say really quick, I just get your guys' call on this, and I know that we'll throw this out real quick. We always say, like, oh, what if Russell Wilson goes to the Green Bay Packers this offseason? What if Russell and I don't think he'll cook in Green Bay. We know what that offense is doing. Matt LaFleur controls that. But if we really want Russell to open up and cook, we should all hope and pray he goes to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Could you imagine with Chase Claypool, with Deontay. I'm sure Juju would re-sign again for another veteran minimum. And then you got, Najee,
Pat
top 5
Freiermuth.
running back, Pat Freiermuth. We could really then say, let Russ cook and believe it. Could you imagine that?
I'd love to see Russell Wilson with a real running back.
Oh man,
I just think that his ceiling is absolutely crazy if he gets into an offense that will let him run or let him let him cook, so to speak. But yeah, I think that's a great call, Johnny. That'd be a really prime landing spot for him.
Literally just came to me when
Pittsburgh is literally a quarterback away because they have defensive pieces as well. If they could just build a little bit around it, obviously TJ Watt, Minka Fitzpatrick.
I might just try to DM my boy and
Mike Tomlin.
I'm going to DM him and just throw it out.
So when we started to write out our notes for this, it was earlier in the week, and Pat Freiermuth was added to the concussion protocol. Since then, he's now practiced back-to-back weeks or back-to-back games at full capacity, including today as we record this. Hopefully you get him back because we want the Muth Luth in this one. He works through concussion protocol, but he's been absolutely rock solid this year, ranking 9th in targets among tight ends. And remember, they didn't get him going until a couple weeks into the season. It was Eric Ebron still going. 9th in receptions, 6 touchdowns on the year. And that's no surprise because he's second, guys, in tight end red zone targets for the entire year. We hope he can run Luth this week, but we'll need to monitor it. We're praying for a speedy recovery, not only for Pat's brain, but for this absolutely pristine matchup here. The Ravens have remained a bottom 5 unit against tight ends all year long. See, we can root for health and our fantasy points at the same time, guys. It is possible.
For the health of the brain.
Yes, we need your brain healthy because we need it to score fantasy points.
Can't get points without a brain.
Yeah, that's right. It's going to be singing the Scarecrow song. I want to tell Whisper Nation about Underdog Fantasy. It's the easiest and best place to play fantasy football for big cash prizes. They have player prop bets like over and under on touchdowns, receiving yardage, rushing totals, and so much more. We will be helping you build some bet slips each and every week when you listen to us. And when you go to underdogfantasy.com or download the app now, you'll get a 100% deposit match for up to $100 when you use the promo code TFW. That's underdogfantasy.com or download the app and use the promo code TFW for $100 of match money on your first deposit. And I know what you're thinking. You're like, into the season, the playoffs have already started. No, this isn't redraft, guys. You can go to Underdog Fantasy. You can build games build rosters for in the game for this week only. It's that daily spin to it. And again, $100 of free money, up to $100 of free matched money for using the promo code TFW. So get on over there. All right, our next matchup is a NFC West divisional showdown between the Seattle Seahawks and the San Francisco 49ers. It is a 45.5-point over-under, and even though we've seen Seattle be god-awful, San Francisco's still only favored by 2.5 on the road here. So that could be something to go target there. When we look at San Francisco, I wanted to ask Austin what Debo and that injury means for our guys Ayuk and Kittle, because it could mean, as we've talked about with Hawkinson and Swift and some other, when an injury happens, does that mean more increased opportunity for our studs? So what do we think about these guys?
Well, I think that we got to kind of like it for Ayuk and Kittle. I mean, how can you really not? I mean, the argument would be that Debo Samuel is helping them get more first downs, but I really think that they're able to still move the ball, get first downs, get in the red zone with Ayuk and Kittle. Like, these are really good playmakers. Debo has been killing it this season. He's going to be a loss for them, but I think that San Francisco, for the first time in a while, has got like more playmakers at their disposal, with the running back position, and then Ayuk and Kittle is mentioned here. And Ayuk has been on the up. He was already there, averaging over 72 receiving yards per game over the last month of football. Stark contrast to his first month of football, where he averaged 14.7 yards per game. He brings a lot of upside into this game for me. It's not a cakewalk, as Seahawks have allowed the 7th fewest points to wide receivers, but also rank as the 27th ranked pass defense. I think it will be opportunity here for Ayuk, and I think that he's going to take that opportunity and perform. Moving over, though, to Kittle, Kittle had his worst game last week with just 1 catch for 13 yards. Worst game in a while. But you should have some excitement, but you obviously can't forget what just happened. It always means it could happen again. But he's healthy. That's a really big deal. There's going to be more targets. You like to see that. And Seattle has allowed the 11th most points to tight ends. He's not a lock, but he brings about as much upside to the game as any other tight end that you could bank on. He's that good, and he's got.
I like it. I'm actually looking at San Francisco, man. They've played really, really good football since that Cardinals game where they kind of got beat up. They've played really, really good football and won the games that they should have. And
Well,
so
that's the frustrating part is that, we say, sit Kittle against the Cardinals. They're the number one team against tight ends. Sit Kittle. You sit him.
You said sit Kittle.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's
I said no.
that.
Okay. I said sit Kittle. You come back from injury, limited snaps. Actually, I'm pretty sure Travis said sit him as well because we heard that Monday morning or Sunday morning he was going to only play the first half, and then plays the whole game, has a mega ball stay. Oh, okay. Let's all jump back on the bandwagon here. Yeah, I'm in. Great matchup. Are you kidding me? 13 yards. That's frustrating. Sorry, I had to let that out. I apologize.
Just where we're at with tight end.
I told people, I was like,
what happens
no,
with your tight end.
But I agree. Stay in the flames with them. I do think it's good. Austin laid it out really nice. I just had to add that. It was a little frustration and apology at the same time for Whisper Nation.
I wanted to talk about, so at the start of the show, we were talking about gratitude in this fantasy football season. And honestly, I almost picked Elijah Mitchell because I think Elijah Mitchell's been one of the most grateful pieces I've had because it took a lot to kind of pivot to Elijah Mitchell after the Trey Sermon draft capital. But when we looked at what was there ahead of us, we knew that this schedule was coming around. We knew that if a back was chosen, a back would be ridden in this offense because that's kind of what Shanahan has done. And we knew the points were available. If we look at Elijah Mitchell for this game and rest of season, it looks incredible. Second easiest running back schedule for the rest of season. Atlanta, Tennessee, and Houston in the final weeks. He's played in 8 games in the season and has over 100 rushing yards in 4 of them. Caught 10 of 11 passes over the last 3 weeks. So even the big knock when he first started coming on the scene was, could he catch balls? But we've had JaMychal Hasty out of the lineup, and that has meant that Elijah Mitchell is out there catching 10 of 11 targets. So we like that. He's capable there. Back-to-back games with 27 rushing attempts. I think for the rest of the season, given the climate of running back, he's an RB1. And I think that's what we've got to treat him as for the rest of the season. Seattle has been creeping up on the Jets, guys, as the most porous run defense for fantasy football running backs. Over the last 5 weeks, they actually have given up more points per game, 32.8, than New York's 32.3. Debo out as well. I think it's a nice bet that Mitchell could have his best game of the season this week against Seattle. All signs are pointing towards something like that. I wanted to move over to the Seattle side of the football, and I wanted to ask Austin again. You know, I feel like I'm giving you all the tough questions here, but can we possibly project any trust in Russ this week?
Trust in Russ. I will not. Russ is messed up right now, Travis. He looked not good last week in a matchup we all thought he'd rebound from. Russ is spiritual, and I think the spirit is off in Seattle. Russ, for me right now, Travi, is in the Taysom Hill or Russell Wilson category. That's it.
Get bodied, our guy.
Wow,
so,
dude. You won't.
Right. And I think it's fair. You know, I think if we're going Derek Carr or Russ, you got to go Derek Carr, right? Like if you're going Kirk Cousins or Russ, you're going Kirk Cousins. Like there's just so many other floor plays that I feel like I'm rather going with than a guy in Russ whose offense is really slow. He looks like he can't complete very good passes. Isn't running. I mean, our bet shows us he barely got there for us. So just not a lot cooking for the chef that everybody wants. Johnny, how about DK and Lockett? If Austin's not trusting Russ, are you trusting DK or Lockett here?
Considering this week, yes, I would actually trust DK and Lockett in this matchup. 49ers, they have been a little bit better as of the last couple of weeks, but they are a better matchup than what we saw in Washington last week for DK and Lockett. And the 49ers have allowed 31.6 fantasy points to wide receivers over the last 5 weeks. So I do think that Lockett has again, he's boomer, but this is what we drafted. You drafted him for this. So you knew this going in to the season.
So Johnny's saying it's your fault.
Yeah, kind of. But I don't have any of them.
Well,
I have DK, but yeah, that's besides the point. Anyway, I do think that unless you have a better option, I'm still rolling out DK because that's going to be frustrating for you in a good matchup against the 49ers if you have him on your bench and DK does what DK does and he's an alpha and you're sitting there saying, why did I bench my stud? And then with Lockett, the whole thing is that Lockett can make your day with just 2. I mean, he can salvage your day with just 2 catches like he did against the Green Bay Pack or last weekend, excuse me. So against Washington. So I do think that if you have to throw him in there, we know what the upside is, but know your matchup as well. So if you're going to throw one of these guys in there, make sure you have a safer option at your other wide receiver spot and at your flex spot. And those aren't your dart throws. Like I wouldn't be starting OBJ and DK together because you're asking for 2 dart.
You're just staring at my league record.
No,
lineup.
dude. Honestly, that sounded cold blooded. Big Travy.
Yeah,
I swear, those were two.
All right,
I was not
Johnny
thinking about
says to
that.
bench my players.
No,
Okay.
I was not saying. I apologize.
Well, I
did
actually had
not
a name
realize.
game for you because I was trying to think about players you would have picked up off waivers potentially or drafted later that are starting to establish themselves as in that category here. And actually, I've got 3 of them here. So I'll ask you, Johnny, both Seattle wide receivers over Darnell Mooney, Michael Pittman, or Jalen Waddle. So guys that we didn't think would be these guys, but have been kind of consistent over the last month or so.
I'd play Waddle above those to DK and Lockett, and what was the first name? Sorry, would you
Darnell Mooney?
Darnell Mooney. I see. I would start DK over Mooney, but I would not start. And I would start Mooney over Lockett. I wouldn't start Lockett over Mooney. But that's
I feel like you're Rain Man here, trying to figure out where you'd start.
Yeah, and then Pittman would be
yeah.
last on that list for me. I would start all those guys over. That was a good little fun name game there.
We've talked about the lack of trust in here, and we're trying to figure out who to start in these positions. But I actually think, as gross as I'm about to sound here, and as maddening as Russ and this passing offense has been, their struggles seem to work for Gerald Everett's play style and his ability to soak up targets, okay? He's now got 8 or more targets and 14 or more PPR points in 2 of the last 3 games since Wilson has returned. Austin mentioned the spirituality. Both Gerald Everett and Russell Wilson, they do Bible study together, so you want to believe the Bible narrative, you got it there. Unfortunately for Everett, this week is a tough spot, though, against the Niners. They only allow 5 points per game on average to the position, which is the 6th fewest. I know we've said this probably for like 3 weeks now, but I do think that it's more of the start your stud week, if you could call him that, with the Seahawks. Even though Russ was bad last week, he still ended up with, I don't know if you guys know this, he still ended up with 19 and 20 points in regular scoring, in most regular scoring. So 23, I think, in 6-point touchdown leagues. So not terrible, but you don't want to be relying on garbage time there. So anyways, moving on, we've got the Kansas City Chiefs hosting the Denver Broncos in the Sunday Night Football matchup. It's a 48-point over-under. Kansas City fresh off a bye and now 10-point favorites to face Denver at home. We've got Melvin Gordon, a little bit dinged up last week. He did return in the game, and then we saw Javonte get a little bit more work than he had before, but still kind of in line with what he's doing. I feel like, again, we're asking this question every week, but where are we at with the Javonte breakout? Should we project to see it here? Because that is kind of typically how you should attack Kansas City, is on the ground to play keep away. Austin, what are you feeling in this backfield?
It's really just going to be about opportunity for Javonte Williams. And if I want to lean into the Melvin Gordon's hurt, and let's go unleash Javonte Williams. But dude, Melvin Gordon has been really good this season. Taking kind of a larger look at the 2 situations here, Javonte hasn't outcarried Gordon in the last 3 weeks and rarely does at all this season. But if Gordon does miss time, this is going to be a really solid matchup. As you said, they're going up against the Chiefs. They got the 29th ranked rush defense. Williams is a solid pass catcher, so I'm not concerned about game flow in this one, and it actually could end up helping out. But Melvin Gordon's not a bad pass catcher in his own right either. Gordon's presence does concern me. He outworks and outperforms Williams regularly, who has been fine himself. Gordon is the 16th ranked halfback behind Eckler and ahead of Aaron Jones. Dude is running really well, and this is a serious game. Denver is already above 500, and if they win on Sunday, Travis Nutt, they are going to be tied for the division lead with the tiebreaker now over the Chiefs. So I think they want to see Melvin Gordon play. He's been really good. We thought that they were maybe selling when they got rid of Von Miller. They've been winning games. Like I said, they win this game, and depending on what happens with the other AFC West teams, they're in first.
Yeah, this is it's an interesting one, and you might put yourself in a tricky situation only because this is the Sunday Night Football game. Vic Fangio about 4 hours ago said that it's a 50-50 on Melvin Gordon to play this week. So we'll try to figure out what we've got there. He's got the hip and shoulder situation going on. But I think you're right, Austin. If they're both in, like, there's no reason Denver doesn't want them to continue to be the focal point of their offense. Like, they're going to push Melvin out there and do his thing. And Javonte is going to be a secondary piece, which makes him that, week by week flex play for you. But you highlighted the 29th ranked rush defense for Kansas City being a good spot for both here. Kansas City presents on paper a nice spot for the defensive weapons in Denver, or the offensive weapons in Denver, such as the passing attack. But can we get anywhere getting them into our lineups here, Johnny, for this matchup?
Yeah, so it's a little surprising that when you look at the target share, we thought, Jerry Jeudy, he came back from his high ankle sprain, and he started to see an uptick in target share every single week. We're like, hey, we can bank on this. This is the one piece that we can start and feel confident in starting. And yet last week, what did it do? It plummeted quicker than Bitcoin over the last 2 weeks. And so it makes it scary in trying to trust any of these wide receivers. You got Cortland Sutton on the outside, alpha wide receiver. You thinking, hey, they just signed him to a contract extension. Maybe we could get him the ball after giving him a lot of money. Nope, that's not the case. Here's what's baffling. Teddy B, coming over from Carolina, had 3 wide receivers in the top 30 last year, and yet what's he doing for our wide receivers here in Denver? Absolutely nothing. You can't do nothing with them. And I understand we look at this on paper. It looks like a fantastic, juicy matchup with Kansas City. Oh, we think we should start him? I'm telling you, it's a trap. Don't fall for it, Whisper Nation. It's a damn trap, because Kansas City actually, over the last 4 weeks, has really stepped up their game a little bit on the wide receivers on the outside. They're only allowing 30.6 fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. And so that might sound like a decent amount that you might be like, hey, I think I might take the gamble and play him in what could be a shootout. I still wouldn't do it. Why? Because then you've got TP on the other side, who will pop up from time to time and be the apple of Teddy Bridgewater's eye. And so you just can't trust and know which one it's going to be from a week-to-week basis. It's like a damn hot volcano. I don't even, what's it called when like a super hot volcano gets active and then it just shuts off. It goes to someone else. You don't know when it's going to erupt. Don't go for it. Don't fall for it. Stay away. Don't be thirsty on Sunday night.
I do just want to make a point about Noah Fant. Got up to 85% of snaps for the first time in the last month last week against the Chargers. So didn't do much with it. Was only 4 points in PPR. But I do believe that Noah Fant's in a good spot against the Chiefs. But to Johnny's point, this Chiefs defense has tightened up against all of the weapons here. But the difference with Fant and these other wide receivers that we're talking about is Fant plays tight end, and we're thirsty for a tight end week to week. And I think you can get, you have more of an excuse to put Fant in your lineup. So I think that's worth a play this week against the Chiefs here. On the other side, we're starting our Kansas City studs, of course, but also I wanted to take a look at Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Obviously, I think he's getting in there, but one game back and then the bye week is what he had. Are we rolling him out there? And could this be a guy that, I talk about Logan Thomas as a really, really great hold, but CEH is shaping up to be maybe a really good hold for people that held on to him for the end of the year as well.
Yeah, most definitely. I'm liking the role that CEH appears to have here in Kansas City. In his return from a 5-game absence, Clyde Edwards-Helaire led the pack with 12 carries and 2 catches compared to Williams' 5 carries and 1 catch. He was also efficient, picking up 63 yards on those carries for 5.25 yards per carry. CEH is really the only back they got. He's the only one in the top 50 for rushing grade per Pro Football Focus. He doesn't have a lot of competition behind him, it appears, and this offense looks to be moving in the right direction, which is really, really good for Clyde's production. Roll him out, have some fun. I'm not even tempering expectations. Let's go.
I love it. We're going to move on because we know we don't have to tell you. You don't have to, pick our brains to understand you got to start all those guys in Kansas City, Tyreek, Travis Kelce, and Patrick Mahomes. We've got the Monday Night Football matchup. It's an NFC or an AFC East divisional showdown here. The Buffalo Bills. This is for the division, essentially, I believe. Whoever wins this will be the division, not for the whole division, but will be the division leader going forward. Buffalo is hosting this game. It's a 44-point over-under. I believe that's even come down. They're favored by 3 at home. When we look at the New England side of the ball, the backfield has basically become that time split. And I'm wondering if in this matchup, we can benefit for fantasy football purposes, Austin.
Yeah, I'm in this one for reals. Our league of record, I got Damian Harris and Ramondre Stevenson. I've been rolling out Ramondre the last couple of weeks, but I'm going to Harris here against Buffalo. You heard me the last 2 weeks talk about the overall rush grade for these two halfbacks. Ramondre had been climbing up, and last week he was number 9 with Harris right ahead of him as the number 8 overall. But after last week, Harris moved up to 7, Ramondre back down to 10. Now, this isn't like a really big deal or anything, but if we're deciding between who we're going to start, I'm going to go with the back who was trusted in the end and got that touchdown for New England. He out-snapped, out-carried, and out-caught Ramondre Stevenson last week, and I think he gets the opportunity to do it again. I like his skill set. I like that Buffalo is easier to attack on the ground than through the air. I don't like that all the backs are being healthy right now, but if you have to go and grab one, I'm all right with Harris here. I think he's like a flex. I think he's got to be a flex with all the halfbacks healthy, but I think he's a really nice one to have in that spot.
If a lot of people in this position where they have both, and you talked about having both, the situation where you have both is in a standard league. Do you feel the same in a PPR? Would you still roll with Harris over Stevenson in a PPR league as well?
I mean,
because I know you said he outcaught him, but I think we think as an industry that Stevenson out projects as a pass catcher, but we haven't really actually seen it when they're both on the field.
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of speculation that's involved right now. I just think that Harris is the trusted back coming out, and that's really close and it's shifty. Check in with me next week, but I'm going with Harris this week.
All right. That sounds good. We'll go with that, Whisper Nation. I want to talk briefly about Kendrick Bourne because I know he's been a hot item. I wrote about him in the waiver column. He's got 18 or more fantasy points in PPR formats in 2 of the last 3 games, 4 catches in or more in 3 straight. And I know 4, you're like, wow, that's not a lot. But in New England, that is a lot. That's showing us that he has been kind of one of the more trusted weapons. Last week, he scored twice. He's cleared 12 yards per reception pretty much over the last month. So he's kind of the big play threat for the Pats offense here. And in this divisional showdown where I think Josh Allen, if he got going, could force the Patriots to match the Bills, I like Bourne's chances of getting home as a desperate flex only, though, because we know the talent in Buffalo's secondary. And even though Tre'Davious White is gone for the season. Poor guy, man. I feel bad for Tre'Davious White. Such a good talent. The Bills, though, still post an incredible secondary. They've got Levi Wallace, Teron Johnson over there, who are both allowing less than 60% catch rate against them. PFF is projecting Bourne to line up mostly against them and not White's replacement, Dane Jackson. So we're not even probably going to get the benefit of Tre'Davious White, his absence for Kendrick Bourne. So temper your expectations in this one and don't get too cute. But if you need that desperate flex, that would be the way I'm going in the wide receivers for New England. Johnny, Hunter Henry is basically a guy that lived off of a ton of touchdown production for us. It seems to be that regression has been hitting his way lately. Do you imagine that still is the case this week?
I do think that continues this week, Big Travy, as look, the Bills are bottom 7 matchup for tight ends this season, and they've only allowed 3 receiving TDs to opposing tight ends this season. Wow, that was a tongue twister. They've only allowed 3 receiving touchdowns to the tight end position all season long, boys. So I do not like Hunter Henry's odds this week.
He does not like green eggs and ham. All right, moving over the Buffalo Bills side of the ball. I know the answer to this question, but Austin, can we trust any of these Bills backs here?
Yeah, trust is a strong word, isn't it? I'm not in love with any of these backs, and if you can go elsewhere, do it. There's really nothing exciting, but if you have to go with one, I'm going to roll with Singletary. I know Brady recently entered the chat and picked up a touchdown last week, but that came on just 2 catches, and his 9 carries amounted to 26 yards. Game flow helped Singletary get the carries that he saw last week. I mean, I don't know if he gets that again, but what I have to note is that Singletary is like weirdly high on all these advanced metrics. He doesn't look great in the eye test, but he's number 12 in overall rush grade and number 5 in elusivity ranking, right behind Kareem Hunt and just ahead of Jonathan Taylor. He's a good back who leads this weird committee with Zach Moss being out. And it's not the best offense for running backs. We know what Josh Allen likes to do, so he's not a sneaky play for me, but the path to points, while narrow, it does exist there for Devin Singletary. That's who I'd be picking, but I'm not doing it with any excitement. I'm going to be starting him in the listener league and just praying for something cool to happen for him.
Austin over here starting the hashtag free Singletary with those metrics, man. Woo! Feels crazy. The nuggets there. All right. I feel that. I was kind of on the Brady hype, but it is really like chasing touchdowns. He has 3 scores in the last 3 weeks, but that's kind of what's made his day. Like nothing else is really there. Nothing over, I think only 1 game over double-digit touches, so nothing really to write home about. It's best to avoid if we can. Johnny, have we really, for the Bills, we got through the messy stuff, have we really arrived at an auto start trio of, Josh Allen, Diggs, and Knox here?
I mean, you're probably already auto starting Stephon Diggs in all your lineups, if you draft him that high, and most likely Josh Allen because you had to spend a high draft capital to get him. So, yeah, in most cases you are. I do want to say in this matchup, temper your expectations. Maybe hard for Diggs this week. The New England Patriots, listen, they have been lights out over the last month or the last 5 games, frankly, at all positions, defending on the outside and the tight end. You're talking about 18.6 fantasy points per game to opposing wide receivers over the last 5 weeks has New England given up. And then you're looking at Knox. Do I play him? You're still probably going to play him as well because you like the fact that, Josh Allen has him on his fantasy team. So he's probably, looking for him in the red area. But I do, again, temper expectations. New England have allowed the 3rd fewest fantasy points to opposing tight ends over the last 5 weeks. So it's just what it is. I wouldn't necessarily get cute because we know that Diggs is talented enough. And we do also know that Diggs loves to heat it up. He gets really hot in December. It's his favorite month. I think he might be a Christmas baby. I don't know that for fact. We'll vet it, but he might be because for some reason he shows up every December. So I would hate for you to sit him, even though in a Monday night against a difficult defense. But unless you really have to have this win and you have a better option as far as matchup goes, for me, I'm still sticking with Diggs.
Oh, yeah, you have to stick. Look, this is what Diggs did last week. He basically went on the media tour of saying that Marshawn Lattimore is one of the best corners in the NFL, which is true. Yeah. And then he absolutely burned him on an out route in the end zone. I mean, absolutely put him on skates. So, yes, we love the secondary for New England. We think they're hot as hell. But as the weather turns in December, we see a guy in Stephon Diggs get hotter than ever. So I'm with you on this. Like, yes, we know that Bill takes away your best weapon, but sometimes your best is better than their best. And I think that might be a situation what we see in Stephon Diggs. It's going to be a very exciting matchup to look at. I remember we thought about this, was it last year, Stephon Gilmore versus DK Metcalf, same New England, same situation. And then we saw a throwdown of Stephon Gilmore by DK Metcalf. But yeah, that's where I'm at with it. I liked how you broke that down there, Johnny. All right, gents, that does it for us in Week 13. We got to wish all you the best of luck out there. Hopefully you can get these dubs, get into the playoffs, or secure that spot. If you want part 1 of the matchup show, you want to fine-tune your advice there, you can go get that by subscribing anywhere you get your podcast. You have any further lineup questions, as more information comes, you're going to want to make sure you check in with us an hour and a half before kickoff Sunday morning on the YouTube channel. So get subscribed over there. You can also check out thefantasywhispers.com for our weekly rankings. Guys, for Johnny Game Time Hicks, Austin Sear, I'm Big Travy. We're the Fantasy Whisperers. We're out of here. Peace.
Right here.
Look at you go. You made it to the end of another one of our videos. Hey, if you still have some questions, I totally understand. Or you just want to join an awesome fantasy football community, head on over to our Discord chat. Link is in the description below. And if you're still not sold on us, check out one of these videos.